Things are spiraling, and they're spiraling fast across the Middle East. So, drawing on the absolute latest intelligence and official statements, we're going to break down how we got to this point, who the key players are, and what could possibly happen next. This is a story of strikes, retaliations, and huge global consequences that are literally unfolding as we speak. You know, this single sentence from one of the initial reports, it just perfectly captures how incredibly serious this is. This isn't just another flare-up. No, this feels different. It's a moment that could completely reshape the political map in ways that, frankly, very few people can predict. So, let's get into it. Where did this latest, really intense chapter even begin? Well, it kicked off with a direct and pretty significant military action by Israel, and they were targeting the very heart of their longtime adversary, Iran. Now, you really have to look at what they hit, because the nature of these targets is absolutely critical. Israeli officials made it crystal clear these were not symbolic potshots. These were surgical strikes aimed at taking apart Iran's core infrastructure. We're talking military command, intelligence centers, internal security. The goal, in their own words, was to strike the very architecture of power. And, as we've seen so many times before, what starts as a conflict between two countries rarely stays that way for long. Almost immediately, what began as a direct confrontation started pulling the entire region into its orbit. The shockwaves from those initial hits in Tehran, they spread, and they spread fast. All of a sudden, cities that were seen as these safe, shiny hubs for finance and tourism found themselves right on the front line. I mean, suddenly, military briefings are mentioning Dubai, Doha, Abu Dhabi, Manama, places you associate with business and luxury, not with battle. Blasts were being reported, and just like that whole sense of regional stability was completely shattered. And it didn't stop there. The conflict pulled Iraq even deeper into the chaos, with strikes hitting a base known to house Kataib Hezbollah, a really powerful pro-Iranian armed group. At that point, the skies over the entire region were no longer just airspace. They had become contested territory. So, with the region already on a knife's edge, the United States makes a move that just dramatically escalates the stakes for literally everyone involved. U.S. Central Command did not mince words. They announced a decisive blow, the total destruction of the headquarters for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. I mean, symbolically, this is enormous. Officials stated flat out that the organization no longer has a headquarters. But why such a massive response? What was the trigger? Well, the catalyst was the death of 3 American service members. That loss prompted a solemn vow of revenge from Washington, and it completely set the stage for a much more aggressive U.S. posture. And this tougher stance became unmistakable when President Trump issued this stark, totally uncompromising ultimatum directly to Iran's Revolutionary Guards. He laid out the conflict in the clearest possible terms, even suggesting a 4-week military campaign was on the table. After that, the positions on both sides just became completely dug in. You had the U.S. calling on the Iranian people to rise up with messages like, "America is with you." And then you had Tehran firing right back, accusing Washington of delusional fantasies and of plunging the region into crisis. With language that sharp, any room for diplomacy just seemed to be evaporating. Okay, so this is no longer just a regional crisis. Not by a long shot. The fallout is now being felt all around the globe, hitting everything from international diplomacy to, the price you might end up paying for gas. The reaction from neighboring Arab states was incredibly fast and pretty much unified. They condemned Iran, the UAE summoned its ambassador and then flat out closed its embassy in Tehran, and the Gulf Cooperation Council promised collective defense. A very clear line was being drawn in the sand. But this goes way beyond just embassies and official statements. Because the global economy is so sensitive to any instability in this region, the markets reacted almost instantly. And here's why. The Strait of Hormuz. It's one of the most critical shipping lanes on the entire planet, especially for oil. So when Iran's Revolutionary Guards declared it closed, they were basically threatening a vital artery of the global economy. If that stays shut for long, you're talking about a serious ripple effect worldwide. Of course, European powers have also very carefully stepped into the picture. The UK gave the US permission to use its bases, but for limited defensive purposes. Meanwhile, the EU warned of heavy costs and started beefing up its naval presence. You see, even limited involvement ties them to whatever happens next. So where does all this leave us? Well, it's really crucial to see these events not as a bunch of isolated incidents, but as chapters in a story that is literally being written right now. The missiles, the explosions, the closed embassies, they are all part of a bigger escalating pattern. And you can just see how quickly things have spiraled out of control. It went from a targeted strike to a multi-front confrontation involving regional and global powers in just a matter of days. Each action has provoked a reaction, and each reaction has led us further and further down this dangerous path. And this quote, this really gets to the heart of it all. In a conflict like this, every single action is a message. A strike is a statement. A retaliation is a response. And when the smoke finally clears, the questions and the consequences are what remain. It's the classic question you have to ask in any conflict, right? And it's one without any easy answer. Who actually stands to gain from all this chaos? And right alongside that, you have to ask, did somebody make a fatal error in judgment here? Did one of these actors completely misunderstand their opponent's intentions? Or maybe their capabilities? And that brings us right here to the final, most critical question of all. This isn't just about the targets that were hit anymore. It's about what follows. As governments and alliances and armies all weigh their next moves, the entire world is watching, just hoping that diplomacy can still find a path through the fire, or if this spiral is just going to continue.